Hello and welcome to another episode of Crossroads, where today we will discuss the Atco Mill Village. Hi, my name is Guy Parmenter and I'm with the Etowah Valley Historical Society, who serves as your host, along in conjunction with the Bartow History Center and the Cartersville-Bartow County Tourism Council. On my right, I have a fellow Historical Society member, Jody Hill, and on my left, also another Historical Society member, Casey Hudgens. To begin the program today, I would like to comment on the Atco Mill Village and say that it began its operation in 1904, but I guess it really got its origin back in 1881 when Mr. Edward Lee McLean, commonly called E.L. McLean, invented a new type of horse collar pad which fit over the neck of a animal. And at that time, it became very popular in the country and, in fact, around the world. And he developed a plant which grew and became one of the largest of its kind in the world. To service the horse collar pad business, he later found that he needed a plant to produce cloth for this industry, and he entered a blind advertisement around 1901 in the Atlanta Constitution and also in papers all across the country. A local citizen, Mr. Paul Gilreath, answered the reply and had a couple of years worth of correspondence with Mr. McLean before Mr. McLean finally decided on Cartersville in 1903 as the site for his new textile mill to manufacture cloth for the horse collar pad business. At this time, we're going to roll some film and we're going to discuss some of the topics that relate to Atco and many of the buildings and sites out there. First, we're seeing an aerial view of the Atco Mill Village. KC, when did you first come to Atco?
Well, I was born in Atco, 1911. And I've been out all my life, really, in and out, but Atco was my home, really. And I've seen a lot of changes out there. I was there when they built most of the village. And I was working for the old American Textile Company when they knocked out the wall and put the south end of the mill. So I just been there around there all my life, really proud of it too.
Good. Jody, what was your background with Atco?
Well, I moved there from Cartersville in 1929 and was there for a period of 10 years through the Depression years. So I had quite a number of experiences, as Casey and others have had during that time. I went to work in the mill at 16, worked at night, and went to school, cast school, during the day. So then I got into the music field, organized a little band known as the Goodyear Ramblers, and played a lot of dances and schools and numerous kinds of shows. Then later I had a band and a program in Rome on the WRGA station, I believe it was at that time. I don't know if it's still there or not, but I had a weekly show there, and we did quite well. And then after that I joined up with Leroy Abernathy, and we played professionally then for some time, all over the country, more or less, playing mainly theaters and colleges, schools, and of course radio program. We played on a number of radio stations, WDOD. We appeared on the Grand Ole Opry once, and then played on WSB, a number of other station. In 1936, I won an amateur contest, state amateur contest, and was privileged to play in Warm Springs for President Roosevelt while he was there dedicating the new Civic Center building. and so on and so forth. But I gave up the music business and got serious, went to work, and I've been working ever since. So I've started in the insurance field at age 21 and stayed with the same company until I was 65 or 44 years rather, experience
Right.
in the insurance business. But I saw some good times and some hard times during those years, the Depression years. But I think, in looking back, I think it was an asset to me. The experience was, and there were many people came up in the Goodyear Mill Village that went on to be quite successful. Numerous people, if we had time, could name and discuss them. But I don't regret the experience that I had, the short time that I had there at Goodyear. A lot of good friends. The people there, in my opinion, are the salt of the earth.
Good. You've had quite a life. My interest in Goodyear comes from the fact that my grandfather, Guy Parmenter, came over from Cedartown after managing the mill in Cedartown for Goodyear. In 1926, he came over to Cartersville after Goodyear bought out the American Textile Mill in 1929, became its first mill manager. And it's always intrigued me, even though I've never lived in the mill village. I've done some research lately for the Historical Society and writing an article about Atco. And the more I get into it, the more interesting it is. We've had several famous people from Atco, and just the quality and the way of life at that time was so interesting. And as you say, the people, the salt of the earth, and I think the true asset to Atco was its people, and it's part of our heritage, and it's a big part of the heritage of Cartersville, and it's one that I hope to further and do more research on and become more knowledgeable on the subject. And I'm glad y'all could join me today in going through this program and trying to provide it for the Historical Society for the viewers of Cable Channel 4.
Well, it's a known fact that the Mill Village was the #1 textile village of the South. It wasn't questionable. One of the most cleanest and well-kept, well-groomed of any mill village, certainly in the state of Georgia.
As some of the pictures we're seeing of the mill, seeing the old office. JC, did you ever pick up your paycheck at the old office?
Well, they paid off inside the plant.
Inside the plant.
But I've been in that thing a many a time when I was a young boy, Mr. Gordon Powell. We had a theater out there, you know. Mm-hmm. And I was the boy that put up his advertisement and so forth and so on. So he'd carry me in there, and about every time after the picture show we go in there, and then we'd go out and put up the advertisement for the next show. 3 nights a week they'd show. Silent movies. And he was a real nice fella. He was really nice to me. It's Earl Powell, Gordon Powell. I know you remember Mr. Gordon Powell.
I never met the man. Never met him. At least I don't think I have.
Well, they worked in the office there, and when Goodyear come there, they sent Mr. Gordon and Earl Powell both to Rockmart. And they stayed over there. Earl Powell finally died over there, but Gordon come back to Cartersville and stayed till he died. Real good fella.
Yeah, they paid in cash. Brought you a little envelope, a little brown envelope with the cash in there. And of course, this was before my time, but I understand they even paid the odd dollars and gold dollars. Paid gold dollars.
Well, I went to work at Goodyear in 1933, 60 hours a week for $9.20 a week.
Yeah.
And my grandchildren want to know why I wasn't a millionaire. So that was one of the causes right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they've come a long way. When I started in the latter part of 36, worked for 40 hours work. I don't remember how much it was per hour, but for 40 hours, $12.88 was my first paycheck.
We made it with it, though, didn't we? Right, we did, really. But you could get a nice Harris shirt for $1 then. It cost you $25 or $30 now. Really.
Right.
Really.
But there's a lot of entertainment at the time that kind of made up for the difference, I guess, with our square dances on Saturday night, Friday night. If not at a school, someone's private home.
Well, yeah.
And of course, baseball. And you remember the old textile, the Atco team, known as Atco Textile League. Later on, it was a Goodyear team. So you grew up with a baseball
Yeah,
team.
I played baseball on the American Textile team,
Right.
the Goodyear team too.
Rudy York, I remember. Of course, I was one of the young fellas at 14, 15 years old out in the field catching his fly balls and having to cross the fence, the barbed wire fence, to get the balls he would knock across the railroad.
Yeah, I got a picture of the 1930 baseball team, Rudy York. He's on there, and there's only two of us living on that picture. J.B. Plessel lived over at Rockmart, myself. The rest of them are gone, including Mr. Bob Powell. He was on that.
Yes.
He was the manager that time.
Yeah.
All of them gone. And we had some good baseball teams back
They
then.
were good baseball players.
Yeah, they sure was, boy, really. Some good ones. And I reckon old Rudy York was number one. He left there and made it in the big league.
He was number one, and it just crossed my mind about one of the games, one of the teams rather, that we played a number of times. There was quite a show. Was Tubby Walton's
Yeah, I remember Tubby.
team from Atlanta. He was a clown, and the whole team were quite clownish. He played first base, and he was around 350-pound.
And he could
man.
play baseball.
And they played baseball, and they played baseball well. And they had blood red suits. And but Tubby was a scout for the major leagues, and this is how it all came about, getting Rudy into the major leagues, Tubby Walton.
Right, well, I understand Rudy started his career in Atco at age 15, I believe.
Yeah.
Started playing baseball.
Well, when Rudy York come to Atco, they moved right next door to me. And I never was all that buddy with Rudy. Of course, he had his outfit that he ran around with, and I had mine. But I knew his wife, and Rudy, he was a good fella. Really and truly, he was a good fella. And he could hit the long ball, boy, don't you think he could? He really.
Yeah.
And another thing, we used to have field day up there in October. And boy, everything in the world, they published some pictures of field day in here now on some of these pictures. But Mr. Parmenter, he'd say, I don't care if you drink up all the booze and bark those kind of, but I don't want any trouble. They went there.
I can hear him now saying that.
And there were no trouble.
Yeah, field day, as I understand, was a big event.
You know, Mr. Parmenter used to come down and play baseball.
Oh,
with us.
sure he would.
He was a pretty good baseball player, really.
Yeah, he would mix with them.
Yeah, he'd mix it up with it. That along when they first come to Goodyear, say 1930, 31, something like that.
Right.
He really had a good personality.
Yeah, I understand that the field day brought out about 5,000 or more people in 1950.
Oh,
Began
that
in
thing
the early
they didn't
30s.
have a barbecue, you know, for all them. I mean, the barbecue field day.
Yeah, free meal, have the greasy pole and the pig and all, there's all kinds of
They'd
things.
have a street dance, you know.
Yeah.
And they really had a good time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, Mr. Parmenter, he was really a good sport. He had a good personality, and he was a fair baseball player. Back in the day, he'd come down and play baseball with us.
I have an old baseball that he passed on through my father with Rudy York's signature on it. And,
Yeah.
I'm proud to keep that, and I've passed it on to my oldest son.
Well, yeah, that's good too.
Yeah. Rudy, we had a field day. It was a field day in honor of Rudy York, and when they dedicated the field there for him, it must have been, about 1970?
72.
72, I guess it was. And we had, this was promoted by old Scout Troop 15, and Charlie Temple and myself and 4 or 5 others. And they planned the day. And we unveiled the monument there for him. Governor Maddox came down and spoke, and Joe Frank Harris, at that time, he was a state representative. He was there. We had quite a number of old timers, and if you remember, we had an old timers baseball game.
Yes, yeah.
Well, Rudy York's younger brother, Lavis, was about my age. Pitched. We had an old timers game, and it was broadcast by this station, this radio station. This, didn't have it on TV then, but it was broadcast, and that was quite an outing. And I understand they moved the monument from where it was originally set up. I didn't know.
I didn't remember the monument until it was moved, and it looks like the Recreation Department a couple of years ago built a new concession stand and restrooms out there, and it looks like the monument was put right in front of it.
We called Rudy's brother Snooks,
Yeah.
And he kept wanting me to play. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll play all day if you get somebody to run for me. Yeah, we had a lot.
But baseball was really the number one form of entertainment at that time, and we'd follow the team. There's the textile team, which included Cedartown, Rockmart, Two Bees, Shannon,
Lindale, right.
many others, and
Really is the North Georgia Textile
Yeah.
League. And we had a regular schedule, maybe 2 or 3 games a week. And at that time, Lindale was the only place you could play Sunday baseball. And boy, we lived up and go to Lindale and play ball.
and no night baseball at all. It was all day ball.
Now, did Goodyear recruit their players to play baseball, or did they draft them out of the mill?
No, well, they recruited a lot of them and gave them the easy outside jobs. Painting houses, if you want to call that easy, mowing lawns, doing things like that. But no, they did recruit quite a number of them.
I tell you, back then, if you could play baseball and you get a job at any of these plants, I guarantee you they'd hire you. And Goodyear hired there for sure, too, and some good ball players.
And jobs were so scarce,
Yeah,
A
kid.
good ball player they were lined up for a
Chink
job.
Bell was one of them. You remember that
Yeah,
name, Chink
right,
Bell?
right.
Yeah.
Old Chink Bell was one
He
of them
came here
come
from
back.
Chattanooga, I believe, that area.
And they just a lot of them that come here to play baseball and stayed.
Mm-hmm.
And had some good baseball teams back then too. In fact, about it, I believe a year or two back, 2 or 3 years back, I believe some of the team could have beat the Braves.
I wouldn't doubt
They
it.
could have.
I wouldn't doubt it. 'Cause
Could
They
have.
had some bad ball players down there, really.
I know I saw where several of the players had gone on to play, other than Rudy York, had gone on to play with the Atlanta Crackers.
Yeah.
Well, Bunk Morris played for a short while with him. He wouldn't stay, but he was offered a contract. He was a left-handed pitcher for years with the Goodyear team. But there were some others.
I know that old boy called Pal Whitener. He played with the Crackers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some good baseball players in
And the
that.
Latimer boy was offered a contract. I don't think he wanted to leave home and play, but there's a number of good players, excellent players there.
Well, what about some of the other recreational facilities? I know Goodyear constructed Wingfoot Park down by Nancy's Creek and Gilliam Springs Road, and had the Goodyear Park to the west side of the mill.
Well, really, Wingfoot Park, they had picnics and things like that, over there.
Always had an annual barbecue.
Yeah, and a barbecue. They always had a barbecue. A real nice place over there at that time.
Yeah. It had many family reunions there, pictures and all.
Real nice.
But it was a beautiful park at that time.
Right. And the park across from the mill, that was just, I reckon just years back, you'd have all kinds of shrubs and everything.
But
Completely surrounded with shrubs.
that was a show place.
Beautiful place.
That was a show place. That was a garden.
And I want to tell you another thing. The guy that laid that park out, he used to have rock wallways around through there.
Walking.
And the guy that laid that park out was from Germany. His last name was Tapscott. And I had a brother born, and he told my mother, said, if you'll let me name that baby, I'll give him his first ever dollar. So he said, okay. And he was German, so he named him Paul Lenois. That's a German name. He laid that, the first man that named him really gave him a silver dollar. If he had that silver dollar now, it'd be all right, wouldn't it?
A lot of memories out of that park. They kept it up, cared for it. It was immaculate looking park, and all the walkways and all the rock and the shrubbery. And it's a shame that it's been destroyed. They're making a parking lot out of it and putting up a fence, cutting a lot of the larger trees. It's a shame. I was, during my mischievous days, I remember one night climbing up on top of the water tank and decided that I would come down, not come down the ladder, but come down the cross rails by hand, and did. And this policeman there, Police Guyton, he was about the time I got down, saw me and reprimanded me for it. But we do those kind of things in the park. It's an interesting park. Yeah, they're making a parking lot out of it now.
Yeah, right.
It's not all going to be a parking lot. I think part of it, as I understand, with the fence around it, it's going to be made. I don't know if it's going to be as big as it was, but part of the park will be restored over time for use for company picnics or other groups that might want to use it.
Well, wrong information.
So it's going to be over a few years, but I have heard that I think it is going to go back somewhat to what it was.
Jody, today they fenced that whole park in. It's fenced in the whole. And down where they used to go in to load their fabric, they got a road cut from up behind the old office building out to the next road. I don't understand that, but they built a road from where they used to come in to get the fabric, plumb behind the main office there, out onto the other streets. So
I understand that's going to be the new entrance to the plant.
Was that right?
Right. That's where everybody will come in, and they're just rerouting that and fencing in the area.
They destroyed a number of old landmarks, though. The what we call the cotton wire house then for the Lucius Hannon store, brick building, a good building. I don't know why it was destroyed, and the school building itself. I have a light fixture at home, a large globe that came out of the room when I was in the 7th grade. When they tore it down, I happened to get one of the globes, which I was in my classroom when I was in 6th or 7th grade. Still a large globe. In the barber shop, and of course it's still standing in the barber shop building. They even had a bathhouse in the back of the barber shop.
Doctor's office?
You know, the houses had plumbing, but they did not have a bathtub or shower. So people, they'd use tubs for their home bathing. And then the men would go down to this barber shop and go in there and pay 25 cents for a shower.
We used to go to Atco barber shop, get a haircut and shave, a shoe shine, and a coat for 55 cents.
Oh, yeah.
Good shave and a haircut.
Shave and a haircut, 2 bits, 25 cents.
Yeah.
Henry Jarrett was there, must have been there 40 years.
Get a haircut, shave, a shoe shine, and a coat for 55 cents. No more. That day they're gone forever, really.
Dr. Schote, Dennis,
had an office.
Harold, he would come there one day a week or a half a day a week and give free examinations to the children. This is their first examination for most of them, I'm sure. But did a lot of volunteer work. They set up a little office in the back there where they showered.
Yeah, he did a little work.
That's how he started at his business in Cartersville.
I'll tell you what happened. You fellow don't remember it, but in 1932, I voted the best dressed man in Cartersville.
I
For my
remember.
time.
I remember.
For my
Casey.
That's for
And justly so.
You know what they got it for that dude today, too. But anyway, Harold Schultz come out, and Henry Jarrett at that time tailored clothes. So I had ordered me a white suit, a white double breast suit, good looker. So Henry said, and this thing come in, bring it up here, I want to look at it. I said, okay, and I carried it up there, and Harold Schultz was in there. He said, man, I'm fixing to get married. You care if I order a suit off that sample? I said, well, that's yours. If you want to, it's okay for me. So he ordered him a suit off the sample that I had. About 25 years later, I said, I could tell you what kind of suit you got married in. You know, he didn't know, he had forgot about me. He said, well, just how the hell do you know? I said, well, you remember the guy brought one in the barber? I said, oh, yeah, I remember it now. Yeah, he bought a suit off the stuff that I had to get married in.
There was a medical doctor in the old barber shop too, wasn't
Yeah,
there?
Dr. Anderson at one time, and there's Dr. Snow in that before your time too, Joey.
That would have had to have been before 29 then.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
That was in the American Textile days, and not
That
during
was
my
in the
time.
very, very early 20s.
Yeah. When Goodyear must have.
Yeah, the
Discontinued that
person
practice.
was the name of Dr. Anderson, and he left, and there was a guy, a medical doctor with the name of Dr. Snow, moved in that office. And they done, you know, everybody went down to instead of well, didn't have a way to go to town.
Mm-hmm.
Go down, that doctor, he had his own medicine and everything down there, you know. Really.
Now, Goodyear established a clinic, I believe, didn't they, when they came in 29, shortly after? Didn't they have a clinic in the mill?
Yes, that was in the Mill Village next to Bob Powell's office. He was the employment manager,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
next office to Bob's.
Yeah, yeah.
And Arthur Parker was there, and he married the nurse. They worked there together, and he married the nurse.
Now, am I right, this was open to the not only the employees, but their spouses and children that
Yeah,
lived in the
the whole
village?
family, right.
So it's like the Army, just...
That's true.
Yeah, you just
Go to the,
That's
you
true.
wanted anything down there, go down to, we call it the personnel office, had the nurse and everything down there. And I know my little girl broke her arm one time. The wife took off with her and carried her down there, and they got the company car, carried her to the town to the doctor, and brought her back, treated, no charge.
Boy, y'all did have it made those
Yeah, we
days.
did. I guarantee you we had it made.
Yeah, well, of course, that far back, you know, they didn't have automobiles. Very few people owned automobiles. Probably
remember
less than a
there was.
dozen people
Right.
throughout the village. And Cartersville was just a little bit far to walk, so it was served and used as an emergency.
Well, that was really the
Several
reason that
years.
there was a village. That's why there was a village, because there was no automobiles, and it's
Yeah, right.
people wanted
Yeah.
Housing
Yeah.
in a short
And we thought
walking
nothing
distance
about
of it.
walking. We walked from there to
Yeah.
downtown Cartersville. The picture shows the matinees.
Yeah, if you cut your finger or wanted to ask for anything, just go down to the nurse's station, they'll pick you up without it. No argument, really. They were, like I say, Goodyear took care of their people out there. I guarantee they did.
Now, we mentioned the Atco School. Now, as I understand it, the Atco School, built by American Textile,
Right.
Yeah.
shortly after they started the mill.
Right.
It went from grades 1 through 7.
Through 7.
Until the high schools were extended to the 12th grade.
When they
50s,
consolidated
40s, 50s.
schools, then county schools, and they built a high school in Cassville, and most of the people in that area then that attended high school went to Cassville High School. Then they just finally phased it out, the Atco School. But it went through the 7th grade, and Monteville Fenton there taught, one of the first teachers, and taught until it was closed. Her brother was on this baseball team,
Yeah, got
and he
killed.
was killed in the mill, an accident in the mill. As a real young man, unfortunate accident. But Joe Gould was the principal all those years
Yeah, she was
of
a
the
good
school, and a good one.
You know, that was a county school, supposed to be 6 months. In the county, they let them out, pick cotton, September, October. But the American Textile and Goodyear, they financed the last 3 months for the teachers and everything. It was 9 months school through them. And Miss Gould stayed down on the school ground all during the summer to keep the kids straight out, and she did, I guess.
They had their own ice plant, cleaning plant, and all the building is still there. It's used for recreation now, I guess, a civic center. But go down and get your own ice. No delivery, you go down and get your own ice.
Had their own laundry.
Own laundry and
The big
cleaning.
laundry had 3 truck runs at that time one time.
And as somebody's mentioned, that may have been the only laundry in Cartersville or in the area at the time?
In the area, I don't know.
I mean, Atco was not part of Cartersville at that time, but that was the only
That's
laundry.
the only one I think that you could send your sheets and your shirts and all that. You know, they had dry cleaners, but they didn't have, well, they did dry cleaning and they did laundry. I mean, all of it. The big one. And they had their own ice plant in the back, and they just had, you name it, they had it out there for the people, really. You get your laundry, and like your laundry was $2.50, they'd take it out through the office at the mill, your laundry bill.
Now, a lot of things were payroll deduction. You had what you bought at the store was,
Yeah,
you could get through
right.
payroll deduction, what you bought at the laundry, the ice,
Yeah. Well,
other
the
activities.
ice, they finally got where they'd sell you a little ice book
Yeah.
for 50
Ticket book.
cents. Yeah. And they just had, you name it, and they had it, and had it right for the people out there. We had it made, I guarantee you. During the Depression, we had it made. When we wasn't working...
Except for one period of time, KC, there's a time that was rather rough when we had a kind of a wildcat strike there. So,
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
and it wasn't unionized, and we had a strike, and it got a little rough, and, you know, it didn't have unemployment, and no Social Security or anything else. So people found it rather tough and hard at that time. So it got a little rough around there, and they had to send in the National Guard.
Now, that was 1934.
That was
American
1934.
National Textile Strike.
Yeah, the National
Right,
Textile.
right.
Now, except for that time, everything went pretty smooth out there. And of course, they worked that out, but
But you know, I worked right on. I didn't join the union. I never did join the union. And I was on job sometime. I'd have to get permission from the union to work on it. But I never did join the union. It's all right with me if they ever let it join, but I just didn't join it. Never. It was, I guess it's a good thing, really.
well,
But at that time, I didn't feel like I wanted to join. I never did join.
I believe in the right to
When
work.
I worked some on supervision, and when I went off of my job on supervision, I had to get permission from the union to do that.
Yeah, I believe the episode you were talking about in 1934 involved the Atco mill and also, I believe, the Cartersville mills. I'm not familiar with that operation, but it was in Cartersville, and it affected both, but according to newspaper accounts that I've read, that there was really no violence at either, and the employees of both mills just really had told the sheriff they just wanted to go back to work and be left alone and stay out of it. Now, all the textile mills pretty much in the southeastern part of the United States were affected by this, and there were groups that came out of the north that wanted to go in and cause destruction and havoc at a lot of the mills, and unfortunately I think it happened in the Carolinas with a lot of problems there. I think there were, I believe I read it where there were a couple of people killed over in maybe in Lindale or somewhere. They had some problems in Alabama with some fighting, and I read also, there was a count in the paper talking about some machine guns in Bibb County that they wanted to sell from that episode from a Bibb County textile plant back in '34. And I believe there was some fighting and some shooting down in Bibb County at the time. And but we, proud to say that in Cartersville and Atco that we didn't have those problems. But the National Guard was called out. They came in, took over from the volunteers and from the sheriff's department, and looked after both mills and camped out there for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, yeah,
I don't think they camped in Cartersville. As a matter of fact, as I recall, there was only one other mill in Cartersville, and that was later known as EZ Mill. It was.
All the National Guard had pup tents out in the park.
Oh, yes.
In the mill.
Yeah.
They stayed there a long time. Really.
Yeah.
Right.
But after that strike was over, these people that come out on strike, they killed their service. They said they didn't go in and come out. They didn't go back. They didn't go in the first place. They just quit, in other words. So there's a lot of them, well, they just all went back to work and that thing is over. Right back on the same job. They didn't have the service, but they went back to work, really.
Right. Well, that was an interesting period. We've talked about the old school building being torn down. Whoever took a dip in the old swimming pool?
Oh, many times. And that, I sure didn't like to see them destroy that pool to fill it back up. It was a well-built pool, a nice one.
Yeah.
With those little 1-inch square tile.
Right.
Bottom, side, top. It was a very nice pool.
Cold well water.
And cold well water.
Had two down there,
And-
500 feet deep, and that water cold as ice, really.
But I learned to swim in that pool.
That was located between the school and the barber shop.
Yeah, right.
Yes, a little closer to the school. And they had the dressing rooms for the pool in the basement of the school.
The old schoolhouse, yeah.
School.
You know, I remember watching them dig that thing out. At one time, there was a basketball court. They had a basket on each end. We'd play basketball on that thing, and then they decided to put a swimming pool out there. Yeah, I remember seeing them dig that thing out, really. In other words, I've been out a long time, around all my life.
You know, one of the cornerstones of Atco, if not the mill itself, is the old store building on the corner.
Yes.
That has I think, a real heritage
Yes.
for Atco.
The Hannon brothers, Lucius and
William.
Will. I don't know how many years they were there, but and it was just strictly a credit, very little cash transactions. It was strictly credit business.
You know, I worked at old Atco store about.
He not only sold groceries and clothing, everything. It was a general store, but he bought cotton. That's why he had a cotton warehouse. He bought
You name it, you bring it in there, he'd buy it.
Shipped it out.
And if he didn't have what you wanted, he'd get it.
And he had a furniture store in the basement. That whole basement store was
Sold anything.
furniture, and they sold some nice furniture. A fellow by the name of Mullinax managed
Oh,
that.
Reno, yeah.
Yeah, Mullinax was manager there.
Yeah, I worked there about 3 or 4 years there, up to about 1933 when the Depression really hit. And I left there, and Bob Powell gave me a job at Goodyear. And old Mac, you remember Mac McHugh?
Oh, yes.
Boy, he was a rough one to work for.
Yes.
But he was a real nice fellow, but
He lived just up above the store building.
yeah.
I had written down a few notes where we're talking about the Atco Store Company. Opened on August 1st, 1905, and it was operated by Lucius Hannon that y'all pointed out. His brother W.F. Hannon came in 1909 and joined him in that operation.
The wheel had that old wheel, yeah, I knew him.
And it lasted until 1947 when J. Keith of Rome and Robert Spradford of Cartersville took over the operation of the store, and the Hannon brothers retired, and it became the Atco Mercantile Company rather than the Atco Store Company.
They sold anything in the world. Bought anything from the farmers, butter, eggs, chicken, you name it. You bring it in, he'd buy it. Huckleberry, anything.
Well, and they operated the
I'm going to tell you this.
post office there also.
We had a guy
Right.
when I was working there. by the name of Dave Santos, and his hand was all, I think it must have been arthritis. And he couldn't read or write. He'd go half that village and take orders in his way, on his book, and he'd have, maybe 15 or 20 or 30 people that he went from house to house and took order and have along. He'd get together with one of the clerks, and he'd say, old so-and-so up there, he wants beans, peas, tomatoes, and he'd give it to one of the clerks. And they said old Dave never did make but one mistake. There's a fella ordered a hoop of cheese and he sent him a grindstone.
Well, that's
understandable. They'd tell that old David they really killed. Yeah, I used to drive a old mule and wagon from this town. Then I finally got promoted to have a T-model pickup. Yeah, I spent a lot of, I think I finally got up to $8 a week from this town.
So
That was 6 days a week. You went to work at 7 o'clock, and as long as they had business, you stayed.
Yeah, oh yes. They would have wagon trains come in every year, maybe twice a year, but every fall from the area of Blue Ridge and Ellijay, those mountain towns, and they'd have a train, they called them wagon trains, maybe 20 or 30 wagons would come down, take them 2 or 3 days, come down, and with produce, apples, cabbage,
Chestnut.
and chestnuts, and of course, being the winter, even beef,
Yeah, right.
all chickens, all that kind of stuff, and sold it rather cheaply. And of course, many of them you could find a pint or two of apple brandy if you asked for it underneath those apples. They made their own apple brandy, but that was a common sight every year to see the wagon train come down from the mountains.
I mean, a lot of them have
They'd knock on every door, and
They have
Just-
these little stairs, some of them.
some of them would, oxen.
Now, these were just the farmers of
These
North
were
Georgia.
mountaineers.
Yeah, those mountain people bringing the apples thing down through there to sell.
They'd bring many other items, but they would be loaded with
Right.
Oh, that's interesting.
mountain produce and stuff. See, back then, they had wild chestnuts were just as common as the oak trees. They were everywhere there, and they gather up those chestnuts and wild chestnuts, and they were
Yeah,
good.
there's blight come
Much
to
better than the domesticated type chestnut.
Right. Yeah, their blight come through and killed out.
Kill the trees.
And boy, this thing was really good, really. Get a quart for about a nickel, and a quart of chestnut, they cost you $100. That guy.
We're running short of time, gentlemen, and I would like to touch on a few items that we haven't discussed. We've only scratched the surface of the discussion of Atco, and I hope we can come back in another episode later and discuss this some more. But I think the major topics in Atco through the years has been the churches.
Yeah.
As I understand, there was a dual church at one time.
Yeah, it really was. The Baptist church now, at one time, the Methodists and the Baptists went to the church. One of them have it one week, and the Baptists would have it one week. And the thing about it, I remember when they built the church, and when they built the Methodist church. So I go a long ways back on that thing.
1921, I believe.
Yeah, I remember they built it.
Is that when they built it in 21?
And another thing,
Uh-huh.
Donald McLean and John Miller ruled the roots of that court at that time. They said we've got a store, we got a school, we got a barber shop, but we don't have a church. And the guys that authorized that Baptist church to be built, both of them was Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
They were both Catholic. So they had a good heart and built that church up there.
Now, I understand that the Christian religion was very strong in Atco through the years. The Baptist Church of the Village of Atco, which is now the Atco Baptist Church, was organized in November 27, 1907. And the Atco Methodist Church South, which is now Faith United Methodist Church, was organized on June 4, 1922. As I understand, they met in the school auditorium. Is
At one
correct?
time, yes, they did, really. Now, I don't remember too much about that because I've heard them say that they met up at till about 1909, and they organized a church, and I don't know where they would hold a meeting until they built that church. I mean, that Atco Baptist Church. But they did have, I remember going to church down there with my mother when I was a little boy, at church. And that's been a long time ago. I was just a kid, a little bitty boy. And they had Sunday school down there, and they had church service in the old school building, in the auditorium part. And after, I don't know where they went after 1909, I don't remember that. But that's when they organized the Baptist Church in 1909.
Right. And I believe as I understand, the Baptist in 1953 took over the Baptist Church, or the old Atco Church, and the Methodists built a new church there on the corner of the main avenue and Castle Road.
Yeah. Sure did.
Well,
Yeah, I remember.
both churches grew so fast until this was necessary. I remember they didn't have, the Baptists in particular, didn't have room for the Sunday school classes, and they would had a couple of classes in the school auditorium.
Yeah.
So that would force them to build another church. Just didn't have enough room.
Yeah, I was there when they built both churches, really.
Now, that school auditorium was a big meeting facility out there.
Oh yes. We had put there's a lot of entertainment. They had a nice auditorium and stage. We had live shows there all the time.
Oh yeah.
Come from everywhere. And of course, this was before television.
Yeah.
Imagine no television and no other kind of entertainment. People would come, if we had a live string band, and most of the bands were string band, they'd draw people from miles and miles around just to come. And like the Grand Theater, admission about 10 and 25 cents. But the auditorium would be filled to the brim. A lot of people.
Yeah, that's where Mr. Gordon Powell
And we have-
was theater. I mean, 3 nights a week, he showed 3 nights a week. I wouldn't want to do them. And I went, after this whole block burned down where the Grand Theater, I went to the opening night of the Grand Theater when that thing was first built. It was a good-looking theater, or they had theater. And they finally kind of got it screwed up a little bit, after so long a time. But it was one of the nicest in the country at that time, for this small town.
Right.
And I went every night when they changed pits. I believe Will Rogers on the first night they had it.
Yes, they had, of course, a self-playing piano there for the background music for the silent films just before going to sound. I believe that was in 27, 28, along there. After it burned, then they went from silent to sound. And I have several of the piano rolls at home now that came out of the theater. 5 or 6, I gave a couple to one of the museums the other. But those were the days, 10 and 25 cents and two films. And I would play, we had a few times in between double features, with a band, play a few tunes.
Right. I have a friend who tells me that was one of the biggest events in his life every year, was going to the auditorium and the Goodyear Christmas party through the years.
Very well. That's the only time I ever seen Santa Claus when I was a little boy.
That's what I understand. It may have been the only gift that some
I'll
children
tell you
got.
how they do that. On Christmas Eve Day, or maybe the day before Christmas Eve Day, they had 2 big Christmas trees, had one on each end of the stage. And you could go up there and put on a present for old so-and-so, and they'd hang it on the tree. And then Christmas Eve night, they had Santa Claus, and they had a step ladder, where they get up to get the present. And they'd take this present down. This is for Casey Hudge, and then somebody bring it back to And then, as we marched out, they had a big old sack. They had 2 or 3 oranges, apples, raisins, and stick candy, and this old bucket candy I always got. And man, I'd save that thing for the whole year, and the old raisins on a bunch, Yeah, Christmas at that time was something else, really.
Yeah.
And that thing would be loaded, really.
Always
It's the only time I'd ever see Santa Claus. He didn't have them in every store back then, every corner.
Right.
And Mr. Lou Shannon go to putting out his Christmas toys for little red wagon and so forth, dolls, about a week before Christmas. They didn't put them out before Thanksgiving. It was about a week before Christmas.
Yeah, it was quite a time.
Yeah.
Jody, you brought a fiddle for us today, and I'm going to let you take time to tell us about it.
Well, as a matter of fact, I brought a couple, Guy.
All right.
I don't know if I mentioned the fact that I started playing or trying to play about at age 14, along in there. And Emmett Cole was the great fiddler of the day. And he took me under his wing and taught me quite a bit. And through him met many other professional musicians. Emmett lived there on Palmetto Street, named after your grandfather at the time. And, I had a fiddle that was handed down to me from my dad. I understand he played. I don't remember him. He died when I was very, very small. But, and incidentally, that fiddle is here in Roselawn Museum now, my dad's fiddle. Quite an old fiddle, a red fiddle. So I bought my own fiddle in 1932, I guess it was. It was made around the turn of the century. It was a red fiddle at the time, and scratched up, being an old user, and scratched up, and I wanted to make it look a little better, not knowing any better, and removed the paint and refinished it myself, which I shouldn't have done. But this is an old fiddle, made about 1900. It's a copy of a Stradivarius made in Czechoslovakia and sold by Sears and Roebuck. And I have some of the first catalogs at home, and it shows this fiddle in the catalog. And it sold back at that time for $12 or something. That and the case, and this is the original case that I have here on the floor with it. But anyway, I used this fiddle in many programs, and played with Emmett Cole and with a number of others. There's quite a number of musicians in Atco at that time. Not only fiddlers, but several good pianists. You remember W.L. Steps, and
Sure do, really.
of course, getting back to Leroy Abernathy, but Herschel Millsap.
Yeah.
He went on to play professionally. W.L. Steps played professionally.
Curtis Millsap.
Yeah,
Curtis.
Curtis. Yeah, he played professionally. And so we had fiddlers conventions back then, different counties over the state, and on a county basis and then on a state basis. Well, Emmett Cole won a state championship. I never did win a state championship. I won third prize at one time in Asheville, North Carolina, in a national fiddlers convention. I happened to be there without a fiddle, and the great Arthur Smith of the Grand Ole Opry was there and entered into it. This was cash prizes, of course. It interested him, and he allowed me to play his fiddle. He won first prize, of course, and I was third. But he's dead now, but his fiddle is in the museum, the one I played on in Nashville at the Opryland Museum now. I saw it a few years ago back. But this was a $5 fiddle. Of course, today would be considerably more than that.
Yeah, bad. Jody, you're talking about...
Just say, we're out of time, and I'd like to thank Casey Hutchins for being here today, and also Jody Hill. And I want to thank the viewing audience for tuning in to Cable Channel 4 and the television show Crossroads. If I could put you in the spotlight just for a second, Jody, I'd like to hear a few chords on the fiddle.
Well, I didn't come prepared for this playing. I was just thinking, we're talking about Emmett, and running through my mind is some of the old tunes that he played. I might try to play one of those old tunes. This particular fiddle was made by the Amati brothers, and it was made sometime between 310 and 350 years ago. They didn't date the fiddles back in those days, but under the Amati brothers, Antonio Stradivarius studied under the brothers for a period of 12 years. So the Amati fiddle is a very valuable fiddle and scarce. Not any of them less than 310 years old, a few that still exist. I've only seen two others, one at the Smithsonian and one at the Ford Museum in Dearborn. And I don't know, there's probably less than 20 or 30 in the United States of Amatis. Now, they're not as valuable as the Stradivarius, even though they are older. But this is one of the oldest fiddles today. It was last played in 1908 in the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra until it come into my possession about 10 years ago, something like that. So it's a masterpiece and something to see. If we just had someone here that could play it, it would sound quite different, guy.
You did a great job. You did a great job.
Yeah, you really did.
And at this time, we need to close, and see you next time on Crossroads.
Thank you.